and welcome to another episode of the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm Mina Rzouki and I'm joined by the fabulous Gabriele Marcotti. Hello Gab, how are you?
Well, I'm feeling fabulous today.
It's my
as you like to say
adjective.
in your world of fashion, exactly.
It's just us two today, but why would you need anyone more? We're going to start off in Spain because because it's been a while that we started off with Spain. It used to be our sort of favorite league to cover in the beginning.
Well, it still is. It's gotten really excited, and Tim Stannard from La Liga Loca will be talking to us. He'll be joining us in a minute. I wanted to start with something which got a lot of play where we are here in England, and that's this story about the Real Madrid theme park. They're opening up in the Gulf.
Yes.
You read about this?
Yes, I did.
And what struck me is everybody sort of spoke disparagingly and mockingly about this, like, oh, it's so crass, and they're only doing this to get around financial fair play rules and so on. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, well, what does that mean, get around financial fair play rules? Like, the rules are how much money are you getting in, how much is going out.
How do you get around it by having this?
They're not getting around it. They're just finding an extra stream of revenue.
Right.
Secondly, people say it's crass and commercial. Now, this really, really bugs me, okay? Because
I thought the whole point is to make money in this industry.
Well, it's a commercial business. I mean, that's crass and commercial, but like your Nottingham Forest branded underpants aren't. I mean, I don't understand. Seriously. I mean, this really, really gets to me.
You know what it is? I wonder whether people would feel the same if it wasn't Real Madrid.
I expect they wouldn't. I mean, I think what happens is if you're Real Madrid or if you're Manchester United or Barcelona, although they get more press. When you do sort of these big things, remember Manchester United in the red cafes?
Yes.
People will go and they will mock and they'll put them down and they'll call them sellouts. And, you know, we've kind of gone past that. Football is what it is. Clubs are there.
Commercial businesses.
Clubs are commercial businesses. And right now, even if they really didn't want to be, they kind of have to be because of financial fair play. You know, and I don't know, I just really,
Listen,
really
if you have it and you can do it and you can make money, why would people say no to that idea? This is what it is. It's like you're encouraged to sort of, you know, be cool and not have this kind of like need to make money or to spend money. It's like Real Madrid and Manchester City are the most hated clubs because they spend money. Yeah,
well, completely. And in the case of the theme park as well, I mean, as I understand it, I think part of the idea from Real Madrid's perspective is they supposedly have this big fan base in China. And so all these dudes in China who just can't afford to ever get to the Bernabeu, the idea is they can go to the Gulf for a couple of days, experience
the Real Madrid experience.
It sounds horrible to me too. It's sort of cheesy, like, you know, I think one of the pieces I read today, they're going to call them the Sergio Ramos tapas served on the Pepe.
It's brilliant that it's in Dubai.
Face.
Everything fake, you know, a little bit. That's the general feeling that you get about Dubai and the Middle East. Sorry, the Emirates.
The Gulf, I think, in general, is probably
There's some old. This is a long story if we're going to get into that. But
whatever, it's their thing. It's their thing to make money. But other thing on the positives is, while it is obviously crass and commercial, it's also a chance for fans in that part of the world, fans who, you know, for whom it's easier to travel there than it is to travel all the way to Madrid. Surely it's not the same thing
for them, but yeah, I guess to feel closer to your club.
What are you going to do?
Hey, listen, if there's a Juventus one, I'd be going.
There you go.
There we go. But let's talk about this. I'm getting a little bit tired of it, but it seems that the whole world is fascinated by how much Messi and Ronaldo continue to break records. And of course, you know, Lionel Messi overtook Ronaldo, the Brazilian one, or as I like to call him, the fat one, as Barcelona's highest ever scorer in a league season. Meanwhile, it looks like if Ronaldo...
And it's still March, by the way. Just get this clear.
Yeah.
It's still March. Like, he did it in 3 quarters of the season. This is what's so absurd.
Yeah, well, it's a different, you know, you could argue millions of things, but also in the fact that Ronaldo only needs to score against Mallorca, I believe, and Barcelona to hit having scored against every single opponent in a season.
Yeah, I think the record, I think he tied the record, which is 17. Somebody scored against 17 different clubs.
But it was in a 22-side league or something.
So he's already ahead of it there.
Yeah, basically.
I think we are in a bit of a special place, but...
are they the 2 best that we've ever seen?
The 2 best that we've ever seen, but possibly the 2 best together at one time that we've ever seen.
Okay.
Possibly. But we've got Tim with us. Can we get Tim on the theme park?
Yes.
Honestly, Tim,
this is really affecting Gab, no. Tim Stannard from La Liga Loca. How are you?
How are you doing, Tim? Here in England...
I'm very good. Nice to speak to you.
it's like they're so bored with Messi and Ronaldo, and the fact that, as we're going to talk to you in a bit, it's getting really excited also for the hunt for fourth place and third place too, of course. That right now the big news here seemed to be this Real Madrid theme park, and they're all calling it crass and commercial, as if Premier League clubs are anything but that. But I just want to get, how was it received in Spain? Did anybody, because the announcement came Thursday, right?
Yeah, it came Thursday, which was a very good time for it to come. They did it on the morning. So it got a few pages. Well, you have to be fair, the only people really going to talk about it are the papers like Marca and AS. It'll be ignored pretty much everywhere else, and they're not really going to take the pee, as they say, or mock it. So it'll, done with all due reverence, how much it's going to cost, what it's going to look like. I've had a look at it, the plans. I've no idea what there is to actually do there. There seems to be some kind of roller coaster. There's kind of a stadium, a beach, and a hotel, but I'm not really sure what else there is to do. It's going to cost $1 billion. Obviously, there's a lot of private finance going in, and I don't know why you'd want to go there, though.
Wouldn't you want to go somewhere that your club is represented and it's like a little funfair land?
Well, I'd like to see what Ipswich Town would do, basically, which is my club.
Okay.
Attract your boys, plug.
They'd have like something on the end of the pier in Hunstanton, maybe. I don't know, but
let's talk about.
I guess they are. They're looking at any revenue stream they can. Of course, Real Madrid's different to Chelsea and everyone else, that they can't bring in. They can't get. They can't bring in private money. They have to get it while they, anywhere else they can, and compete with clubs like Manchester City. They can't be bought. They can't have extra money pumped in. So if it's going to make them a whole lot of money, then that's the job of Florentino Perez, I suppose.
They can't have extra money pumped in unless they go and borrow it from friendly banks, right?
All that as well, but it still won't be their money technically. But yeah, you're right.
Tim, let's talk football, but I don't want to talk the big clubs this time. It's one that's sort of losing the edge a little bit. We have to talk Valencia.
Sorry, Mina, I'm sorry. I've got friends in that part of the world. I will not have you disrespecting them.
What, not putting them in?
Tim, you're my witness here. Did she just say, well, let's talk about football, but not big clubs. Let's talk Valencia.
Because, come on,
Valencia,
it's Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Valencia,
These are the big
who reached
clubs.
the Champions League final in the last decade. Can you help me out here?
Okay, fine. They're a big club in Spain, but in the grand scheme of things, it's only Real Madrid and Barcelona. I think it's fair to say. No?
No.
Well, Valencia have managed to dig themselves into a bit of a hole. They're more of a basket pace.
And it was against
Getafe.
So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that the coach is going to lose his job? Or, I mean, he was talking about this possibly being his last season. It appears like he's looking for somewhere else to go. I mean, personally, I'm a huge fan of Luis Garcia Plaza, so I was happy to see them lose to Getafe just because I love the way that Plaza really organizes his teams and they're defensively strong. But do you think this is sort of injecting some life into La Liga without Valencia always coming third and everyone just fighting for the fourth spot?
Well, I wrote today that it's actually fantastic league this season. Well, the top two is entertaining enough. It always is. There's always enough off-the-pitch stuff going on to keep you amused. But away from that, Valencia's collapse, just 3 games won in 2012. In actual fact, they got a worse record than Zaragoza in 2012. They took their foot off the gas. They've sort of disintegrated. They seem disinterested, and then the fact that Malaga slowly have caught up in Levante, had they won, would have been equal on points with Valencia, has really shaken things up a bit. So there is this giant cluster of clubs. Not many of them can actually put a string of wins together, and it's made it a really exciting end of the season. And yeah, on Unai Emery, for example, for Valencia, he's gone at the end of the season. I think he should walk before he's pushed. He deserves better things than he's getting from his bosses and from the fans. I think he's done a tremendous job at Valencia, a club that was very nearly bankrupt when he took over, and he's delivered success as much as they can, having all his players sold from under him constantly, fans constantly on his back. I don't know what more they want. He deserves better.
Kim, I wanted to ask you about Unai Emery, because I've been following him since he was doing well at Almeria, and then of course he moved on to Valencia, did well at first, and then people just seem to turn on him. I speak to Spanish colleagues, and some of them tell me, no, Emery's no good, the players don't listen to him, nobody respects him. I'm wondering, are they being harsh, and could this be the kind of guy where, or one of those cases where, a manager leaves a club, maybe isn't deemed a success at the club necessarily, but learns some important lessons along the way and comes back stronger, because he's still quite a young guy. Can you profile him a little bit for those who might not know him?
Yeah, this is going to sound a bit harsh, but I imagine after 2 or 3 seasons being managed by him, you'd find him incredibly irritating. He's a very punctilious manager. he gives you videos, he makes you stare at whiteboards for hours on end, on days on end, makes you study. And when you see him on the touchline, he's constantly moving. He's crouching, pointing, shouting, giving instructions. And, getting his defence in order, just wanting micromanaging every single position throughout the game. And that's brought him success. But I think after a season or two, it really does begin to wear with a lot of the players. And that's what's happened with Valencia, I think. They've just got a little bit tired of him. The fans have as well. Valencia is a notoriously difficult club anyway. But Unai Emery, if he went to another club, he would change the philosophy. He would change the way things are done. He's got a huge amount of enthusiasm for the game. And for someone being so young, I think a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. So he'd be a benefit to any club. However, after 2 or 3 years, you really have had enough of him.
But doesn't it seem like sort of his experience with Valencia would mean that he would never get a job with the top two, Real Madrid and Barcelona? They're looking at sort of Espanyol's coach, and other names are being mentioned, but it never would be Valencia's coach. Do you think that's because of what's going on now, because, what he suffered in these last 3 years?
You'd have to. I think a lot of other fans really do like Unai Emery, and you'd speak to other fans and they criticise Valencia a lot. The way the club is run, that's not the way the club is run, but the way they treat their managers, the way the fans treat him. And speaking to Atletico fans during the week, and they said they'd love to have him at the Vicente Calderon if it all goes wrong under Simeone, which it looks like it might be doing. So there's a lot of respect for him, and a lot of people who don't really understand why the Valencia fans really don't seem to like Unai Emery much at all. He'd have to make a sideways move in Spain. He probably wouldn't get one of the big two jobs, or move abroad. And again, there's a lot of people watching the job he has done in very, very difficult conditions over the past 3 or 4 seasons. He's delivered as much success as he possibly can at Valencia, I think.
Tim, I know we're done talking about the big two, but I need to pop back because I've got this little question. I think it's been nagging at me. It's obviously Jose Mourinho, Real Madrid are in a blackout now. Even today there was some argument about who decided the media blackout, whether it was Mourinho, and then Butragueño said no, it was the manager. I presume it would be Mourinho. Mourinho says no, it's the club. But basically, for those who don't know, Mourinho and his assistant Rui Faria got sent off in midweek along with 2 players, and they're all very angry with the referee, and it's all stuff we've seen before. And I asked somebody, after sort of 3 months on his best behavior, Mourinho, during which time they increased their lead over the opposition and everything was going great and they're cruising towards a title. Now all of a sudden a screw falls out again and he goes a little bit nuts and is doing him no favors. And I asked somebody, is there a master plan here? And this is the theory they put forward, and I'd like you to comment on it. It's the theory was that Mourinho knows he's won the league. He knows Real Madrid have won the league. There's no question about it. But he doesn't just want to win the league. He wants to win the league, and he wants to beat Barcelona at the Camp Nou, or at least not lose at the Camp Nou. And so he's doing this whole thing with the referees and throwing his strop because he wants to get into the head of the referee who's going to officiate that game on April 22nd. That's all he's thinking about. He's happy to drop points, get people suspended along the way, as long as he can mess with the referee on April 22nd and go and emerge victorious from the Camp Nou.
Mm. I believe, 2 things are a response on that. I believe Mourinho, when he says he actually wants to get this thing wrapped up as soon as possible so there is no mistakes, no possible chance of them blowing it. And also actually spoke to someone who works within the club and said what was going on with this, the whole business on Wednesday. Was it just because they lost? And it seems the club genuinely were upset at the way the referee acted, whether rightly or wrongly, and they felt that he went overboard. They felt he had it in for the Real Madrid players. The way that Ozil was sent off for one comment with a direct red, the way that Pepe was sort of punished after the game, and they say Piqué wasn't, because he made comments as well. Rui Faria sent off for applauding what he said was
Sorry. Piqué made comments?
Goal, but
Piqué wasn't there.
That was the best thing.
No, in his...
Sorry?
Sorry. I mean, I understand. Like, I know this is Real Madrid you were talking about, right? But you're saying, like, Pepe was punished afterwards. He made comments to the Real Madrid fans and to the Villarreal fans and Villarreal officials, as well as the referee after the game, as did Cristiano Ronaldo, who was not punished, funnily enough. But they compare it to Piqué. Piqué wasn't there. So what are they talking about?
Well, they just think that, this is from their side, that the silence came along because they thought perhaps that was it might have been a smart idea rather than make the situation even worse, knowing how Jose Mourinho can be in press conferences. The decision was taken maybe that they should just keep a silence and leave it as it is, and that might have been the best idea. But from speaking to someone in the club, they genuinely felt there's no great tactical plan here on the night, that they were very much hard done by. That's for other people to agree with or not, but that was the feeling within the club at the time of the match. There is no great scheme, no great plan for the Camp Nou. It was just a one-off moment on the game against Villarreal.
All right, thank you, Tim. That's sadly all we have time for on Spain, but I'm sure we'll be speaking to you next week. If you watch that game, I don't think that they're really hard done by, barring the expulsions at the end. But in the beginning, I thought that Villarreal had their chance. They weren't awarded a penalty. Well, and they've kind of had a lot of referees going for them in their decision-making.
Also, a lot of the annoyance was the free kick. You know, they say it wasn't a foul for the free kick. Fair enough. But do you see Casillas' goalkeeping on that? I mean, how do you concede a free kick where the ball bounces in front of you and then goes in?
Yeah,
you know, it just seemed, I don't know, that whole situation to me just seemed kind of bizarre. And that's why I thought, like, surely there's got to be some kind of master plan here. And there's a big backlash. El País, who as you know, is not a sports newspaper. I mean, they could care less about sports. They had an editorial, so it's nothing to do with sports. It's in like their news pages, basically going after Mourinho and saying that, you know, he's effectively instigating violence with his behavior, with the things that the players said and did after the game. And it was just, I always assumed this whole thing with, is Mourinho going to leave, was basically just a ploy for him to get a better contract and more money. But he's just rubbing so many people the wrong way, people from outside football who only know him as this guy who creates headlines. I don't know. I wonder if they're going to have a rethink if things don't work out this year.
Well, you never know, but that is all we have time for on Spain. We will be back to discuss Italy and other leagues, so please do join us after the break. See you then.
Welcome back. We'll be heading over to Serie A right around now. Mina! We still have a title race on our hands, yes. Juventus and Milan. Sort of, just barely, but, you know, it still is a race.
What do you mean just barely?
4 points.
Yeah, well, it's not much.
Well, there you go. I'm glad you still believe. But let's start in the race for third, because there was a point, I mean, there was a point, Napoli and Lazio were, I just thought it was fascinating when you've got two games on at the same time, you're sort of following the ebb and flow. So Napoli go out there, they're playing Catania. They waste about 7 goal chances, most of them through Cavani. Then they're sort of 2-0 up. In the meantime, Lazio are playing Cagliari. Lazio are playing badly. There's no Klose. Rocky's up front. He's falling over. And, well, so it looks like, all right, Napoli are back in the hunt. They're going to make this big two-point leap forward. But then, boom, Catania hit them twice, finishes 2-2, and Lazio somehow grab a goal and win, and Lazio's still in third place. Is there any rhyme or reason to it?
To be honest, this is, for me, I've never been a huge fan of Walter Mazzarri. I don't think he's the greatest tactician, and I think that they've just become quite easy to suss out. Defensively, their back line needs a lot of work, and it needs to be changed. They're lacking in pace. They can't head to save their lives. So whenever it comes to set pieces, you know that you can hit Napoli, and you saw what happened in the
well, they have the guy who can head, of course, Fede Fernandez. The problem is that's all he does,
yeah,
which is why he doesn't start.
Yeah, exactly. He's bad at everything else, but you can't just play him. But, I mean, they are also you should never underestimate Catania. You see, when they were talking, and this really bothers me, when people talk about the fact that Milan have an easy run-in, and then Juventus is harder. For me, I mean, Catania is the next match. That's like one of the hardest teams to try to beat this season.
I think the thinking was that late in the season in Serie A, those mid-table teams like Catania, who really don't have that much to play for.
Happy with mediocrity.
Well, I'm happy, but like they've proved their point this season. Montella's probably going to leave, and so they might give you an easier ride than somebody just
leave.
fight
You
his
think
tail.
so?
Sorry?
You think he's going to leave?
I would imagine Montella is being lined up for bigger and better things, right?
I'm sure, but I don't think that he would leave after only one season. I think he's going to want to see how much further he can go with this.
What if he gets offered the Inter job?
I don't think he'll get offered the Inter job. If anything, I think he'll be offered the Napoli job. But which, it would be nice for him to... I would like to see a different manager.
So where's Mazzarri going to go?
I don't know, Mazzari's being linked with everyone, but all the recent headlines are saying to Napoli, and I don't understand why, because I was like, where's Molto Mazzari going? But maybe he's the one that goes to Inter.
Right, let me ask you this. I mean, you've seen the highlights from
Although, also, I just want to point out that Calcio Catania have an amazing club, an amazing base. You know, they're going for that. You know, they have obviously their sporting centre. They put money in. They've always wanted to go up, and he's been supported by something great. So it's not entirely his doing, as much as I think that he's quite a tactical wizard at the moment.
No, they have a very good director of football as well, who might be leaving the club as well, of course, Monaco.
Do you think that he will take the Fiorentina job?
I don't know. He's been linked to Fiorentina. I mean, it's weird, though. They get into the whole world of Della Valle brothers. And
then Catania's also going to try to aim for that stadium that they've been having talks about, 80 to 100 million euros investment. It's a great little club. I mean, if I was Montella, I wouldn't leave right now.
I don't know. It's hard to resist it. I tell you what, he's an ambitious and intelligent young man. But enough Catania, Napoli, Lazio, because let's talk big things. Let's talk Derby d'Italia. Let's talk Juve and Inter with our man. Wow. Now this is the Tancredi Palmieri, who I see you've redecorated your house.
yeah, it's definitely, you know, this is everything is going good with Sports Night Live, so see what kind of job I could make here in my place. No. I was wondering how long still you could wait.
Tell us where you are.
Well, we are at the Hall of Fame Sports Bistro in Milan. That is probably one of the best places here in Milano where to come to enjoy sports and other things. And as you can see, actually, you can't see all over the other rooms, but it is very nice. Should be a kind of museum. Should be to pay a kind of ticket to get here.
Where you enjoy sports and other things. What are the other things? Never mind, Tancredi. Derby d'Italia, what did you think of Inter's performance? And now there's all these rumors of Ranieri hitting the end of his time with Inter. Is that true?
Well, today, early this morning, well, we'll say midday today, Sky Sports Italy came out saying that probably there was never such a moment like this for Ranieri, never there was such a danger to be sacked. Honestly, personally, frankly, I wouldn't rule in that way, as Sky Sports said, but then just a few minutes ago, Massimo Moratti, the Inter president, spoke, and he said that, literally, his words were, I think Ranieri will stay until summer. Now, the meaning of this I think coming from Moratti's mouth could be enough to fill encyclopedia about Inter's story. Probably the most fitting explanation is that anyway, Inter yesterday played a quite honorable performance. Until the 65th minute, they were completely leveling Juventus, if not even better. And then again, after the first goal, they completely melted down. And so when Moratti said, I think, probably means if Inter will play honorable until the end, Ranieri will keep his job at least until the summer. If they will not concede any 4-0 or some defeat at home in San Siro, as they did against Bologna, so something that would be really a disaster for psychology and everything. So probably there wouldn't be any need for another further sacking in this season, and actually also because there are not so many alternatives around.
You were talking about the fact that, and Ranieri did say after the match that basically when they conceded, they sort of fell apart. But I think that we need to give credit to the fact that Antonio Conte knew exactly what to do. I mean, there was all that space with Nagatomo's side, like they had to, with Poli on Pirlo, it was the right thing to do was to strengthen the wings and allow Cáceres to push up. So I think we have to acknowledge that it was a 3-5-2 that sort of changed the game entirely.
Exactly. The thing is that you are coming harsh to the point, but that it is actually. At the 65th minute, there was a manager that knew that probably arrived there wrongly, but knew what to do. And then after, there was a manager that arrived there with the right attitude, but didn't know what to do, because actually the changes yesterday were kind of a big enigma, also in all the TVs, for all the journalists. I mean, the midfield, the Inter's midfield was performing so good. Finally, there were legs.
Exactly. Why were they taken off? Why did you take off the passes of the ball? Why did Ranieri take them off?
Because you put on wingers like Faraoni
Well,
and another striker like Pazzini, so he could fight.
But what is Pezzini
Yes,
going to do
indeed.
for you? I mean, he doesn't really add another body when you need to sort of strengthen against that 5 midfield of Juventus. You know that they're going to hold that line. You're going to shove in another striker who is like Pezzini, who generally stays up quite high. How is that going to work for you, tactically speaking? Faraoni, fine, I understand. But
You know,
you had 2 passes of the
we can
ball who
make
were doing really well in the
speculation
first
about
half.
All right.
We can make speculation about.
Enough criticism of Inter. Let's move on and talk.
See, the
Can we talk
first
some
point
Del
was
Piero,
about
please?
Pieri.
Del Piero, talk Del Piero.
Talk some Del Piero, because this guy is going to be 38 years old in November. His contract with Juventus is expiring because the evil hobbit who inherited the club isn't giving him a new
Oh,
deal.
enough criticism of Inter, so let's start with Agnelli, shall we?
but
Your usual.
He scored, in the past week, he scored against Milan and against Inter, and he hasn't complained all season long. He's not playing.
Yeah, this is the cover page of Gazzetta, as you can see. Una Juve al Balcio, that means kind of such a Juve. And, well, definitely it's the perfect revenge, I think, that every footballer could hope in a situation like that, because honestly, the way it was announced that Del Piero was going to quit with Juventus was going to finish this year, in my opinion, but I'm not the only one to think that. Honestly, it's quite spread opinion. It was quite was not deserved for a kind of personality like Del Piero. He didn't spell a word, he didn't spell a mouth, he didn't complain all the year, even in situation when honestly everyone was thinking why Conte is not bringing him in, because now probably Juventus could need some kind of his fantasy or his creativity.
Well, listen, now that he's in form, he's playing. But I do think the way that the media has reacted to the way that Agnelli said that he's not staying is a little bit exaggerated. It's been mentioned...
I'm sorry, Mina, I have to disagree. The thing is that he has to, not even Del Piero agreed with that. But as long as it is, and I have to pay him a full respect for that, as long as it is a real captain of a team, a real captain, I would say also of a company, of a family, as Juventus, he said, in a season like this, in a year like this, if I bring out my problems at first, that could, I'm sorry for the word, that could screw all the ambitions of the team, because probably everything would just focus on speculations and on quarrels over my position. What is sure 100% is that Del Piero would have signed for sure to continue again with Juventus. Yesterday again, when there was this kind of Italian match of the day, and he was there and I was joking with him, he said in between the ends what he said, I didn't say I'm going to quit football. And actually that's what it is. He will have plenty of options. Of course, it's not said that will
But
be...
he said that this would be his last season with Juventus. It was said when the stadium was nearing the end of when it was being built.
No,
it was mentioned several times that this would be Del Piero's last season.
It wasn't him, it was the monobrow weirdo who owns the club.
Del Piero also said so. I'm sorry, it did. When he was playing against, it was mentioned before.
Okay.
For me, I thought it was an overreaction. However, I'd like to see him play, obviously, because he's our captain, so I wouldn't want him to see all the time. But I don't think that it was as bad as everyone made it out to be. And if you go to Juventus blogs, a lot of people didn't think it was bad, and these are Juventus fans speaking.
And Juventus fans know, of course. Tancredi, sorry, but we have to talk about the one Italian team who are leading the table and who are left in Europe, and of course, that's Milan. Now, they've got this huge game coming up against Barcelona in midweek. They
got another penalty.
They played Roma at the weekend, and I was fascinated. I really believed, like, because, you know, I'm on the bandwagon. I'm a true believer in the Warriors of the Light, Luis Enrique and Franco Baldini, and the way they're playing football. And they go out there. I thought they put Milan to the sword early on. They take the lead, and then they give away a bit of a silly penalty. And then what do they do at 1-1? They just keep attacking. He sends on more strikers, and Milan go, and they nail them. Ibra again on the counterattack. Milan perhaps a little bit lucky to get all 3 points in that game?
Well, honestly, definitely, because in the first half, actually, Roma full deserved. I must say it was not something completely brand new, this attitude from Luis Enrique, because it's true that he's going for ball possession and leading control, whatever. But when he had this season the game against Juventus at Olympic Stadium, that was probably the only game where Roma was at a huge disadvantage before the kickoff, as against Milan. They completely left, in that case, the initiative to Juventus. They did the same this time with Milan, but the thing is that Milan, even if they could leave control, they didn't have on the midfield they were not playing any creative midfielder like Aquilani, like Seedorf, so nobody actually, they had the pitch, but they couldn't actually develop this kind of game, and actually then Roma could come out, possess more the game. What happened after is just probably what Luis Enrique is complaining about. That means not having a kind of defense that could match with this kind of games, because honestly, the disaster of the Danish shear on Ibrahimovic is something like, guy, I mean, it's a long ball. You have just one man to take care. And
okay, all right. Be fair, okay? Ibrahimovic is bigger and heavier, and Simon Kjær wears, as I pointed out last week, he wears a little hairband, and he looks kind of like a girl. In spite of a very tattooed girl, but a girl nonetheless. Anyway, I want to ask you, though, because the big story for me on a European level is actually Massimiliano Allegri. He plays Thiago Silva for 120 minutes during the week. He decides to play him again in this game, decides not to rest him, and the worst thing happens. Thiago Silva gets hurt. Now, you tweeted at the weekend, it looks like he's going to miss the first leg against Barcelona and the second leg. I hope it doesn't mean Bonera. I'm hoping Nesta can dust himself on, put on his Superman suit, and be back there. This is a disaster for Milan, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. In some way, I know that could sound controversial to say that, but in some way, maybe the importance in this moment back there of Thiago Silva is maybe got even a bigger weight than the one of Ibrahimovic up in front. Not because anyway Boateng is coming back, and anyway, of course, I'm trying to be a bit provocating there, because of course Ibrahimovic, no one can rule him out. But seriously, the way Thiago Silva was playing this season, it's hard to find a fullback that can look in the eyes Messi without feeling scared, and probably Thiago Silva is one of the few. Today there was the confirmation that Thiago Silva will be missing for sure both the legs of these quarterfinals. Nesta as well will be back. Nesta will be back for sure. Massimiliano Allegri already confirmed that in the press conference on Saturday when asked about Alessandro Nesta's condition. He said he's good, he's back, he's completely fit, but of course didn't want to risk also him. Respect to Allegri for taking the responsibility of the choice. He said just after the game, it was my risk, it was my responsibility, it's because of me that happened. Still, what will happen in the games will tell if it was such a huge job.
I'm sure it was actually, with hindsight being 2020, it was a stupid decision. But it's always easy to say that after the fact.
I agree.
Tancredi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Now, of course, can't get enough of Milan? Well, in our next segment...
I thought you said can't get enough of Mina.
or Mina, you know, different strokes for different folks. In our next segment, if you can't get enough of Milan, we'll have Milan old boy, Carlo Ancelotti. Stay with us. All right, we're back, and we're going to get stuck into some French football. But Mina, before we do that, we've got a special treat. We're going to get. I know. You work in fashion sometimes, so you like the whole sort of camp universe. And we have something which is camp and football related and French. What could be better?
Wow.
Behold, Paris Saint-Germain. Going and emulating their heroes, the village people, singing
like
their club anthem, and you might find the tune a little bit familiar.
Allez.
Le cœur à jamais rouge et bleu pour le PSG.
Mina, control yourself here. Now,
It's a really catchy song.
So here's what I don't get. Exactly, it's a club anthem. Do you prefer the Village People version or the Pet Shop Boys version, or the PSG version?
PSG version.
There you go.
I'm almost willing to support them now.
Well, now at one point I expected sort of Jeremy Menez to come out dressed like an Indian and like and perhaps Pastore as a policeman.
Maybe they could have done the PSG with their hands. Yeah.
Even Diego Lugano, who I actually think is legitimately cool, kind of looks like a dork in that. The only guy.
Oh, you think he's cool?
He's cool.
The people that you think are cool and the other people that you think are not cool. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you think Antonio Conte is very cool, so I think that about
and you don't,
that about sums it up. Andy, and Perry saying we got Andy Brassel here who's joining us. Now,
Hello.
We poked some fun at Paris Saint-Germain, perhaps to cheer them up from the fact that it's another 2 points drop this weekend.
Form.
But before we get into that, I want to ask you, because Alex looks miserable in that video. And I don't know if he's miserable because he has to go and, Alex a big tough man because he's got to go and go participate in this insanity, or if it's the case that maybe he's not settling in as well as he'd hoped, or Ancelotti had hoped.
Well, firstly, I'd like to say how disappointed I am with the introduction, because when you said you had something camp and glamorous and to do with French football, and then it wasn't me, that was a huge letdown. But we'll gloss over that.
We'll gloss over that, but we'll pretend next time we'll give you an even better introduction.
I should hope so too.
Andy, there are many more camp people than you in France. You should know that.
Apparently so. But I think Alex is doing well from the perspective that he's not Diego Lugano. Now, we talked about what an iconic figure Lugano is, but he's really not done well at PSG. He's not really had the chance, to be fair. Of course, he had such an iconic status, Fenerbahce, and you could tell that from the send-off they gave him at Ataturk Airport. It was absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like that for a departing player. But he made a few little mistakes early season, which is not that surprising, given the different style of play, given that it's very, very physical in France, given that he's been in Turkey for so long. And, he's just been crucified for those mistakes. And, he will go in the summer because of that. Alex, I guess a few little things cover a multitude of sins, namely that free kick against Montpellier, which was excellent. But even if there have been defensive mistakes by PSG, I think you have to really look at the weaknesses they've got in the full-back areas. Those are the real problems that need to be addressed come next season.
It does look like they seem to have way too many defensive mistakes going there, and they also seem to not be able to defend a set piece to save their life. But I want to talk mainly about the striking partnership and the fact that Carlo Ancelotti doesn't like the idea of playing both his forwards together, Gamero and Oro. What do you think about that? I mean, he tried that, it didn't work, nobody scored. But do you think it's a case of if we stick with it, maybe after 3 games, they'll find the right chemistry and start playing together?
Well, it's a case of plus ça change, really, Mina, because this was a big problem for Antoine Kombouaré, who, of course, came before Ancelotti. Now, his preferred system was 4-4-2. Pastore coming along meant he had to switch from that. You can't play 4-4-2 with Pastore, so he switched to 4-2-3-1. Gamero wasn't really suited to being the one. Waro had been unfit and out of form. He's not really, I guess, glamorous enough for PSG either. So he's only really a short-term solution, even though he's really justified his place over the last probably 4 or 5 weeks. But Gamero's not really been in the form to justify inclusion. There's been that late winner at Dijon, but that's the only goal he's scored for maybe 10 weeks. But the problems have really arisen since Pastore's come back. Now, you can understand Ancelotti adopting a very conservative 4-3-2-1 since he came in, because, of course, he took over a team that was top of the league by 2 points. So he had nowhere to go but down. So, he created this protectionist strategy, which was fair enough. Thiago Motta's key to that. But, it's become a problem reintegrating Pastore into that. Then I think you saw that on yesterday against Bordeaux when, they said that Menez was injured. And then afterwards, Ancelotti came out and said, well, actually, Menez did take a little kick in the first half, but it was tactical. I needed another defensive midfielder on. And, for PSG to be playing like this after spending so much money is, not really what the fans want.
Well, it's interesting because I believe they were speaking at a conference, sort of league officials, and Leonardo came out last week and he was absolutely brutal towards French football in general about their lack of organization and then lack of a winning mentality. He mentioned, his own skipper Sacco. He's like, oh, he was 3 kilograms overweight. Nobody had even noticed. Now, I love Leo because he is a warrior of the light, of course. But
Everyone's a warrior of the light.
all right, stop it. But I have to say, it's a little bit more credible when you come out and tell everybody what they're doing wrong when you're sitting top of the league. It's easier to get that message across. It becomes a little bit more believable than when you've got a team with no money, no fans, and no players like Montpellier who are ahead of you, right?
Yeah, and he's become very, very tetchy over the last couple of weeks, Gav. And I think the whole Comboire saga really reflected quite badly on him. We think of Leonardo as being perfect for the role he's in at PSG because he's very charming, he's a polyglot, he's comfortable in every situation, and a real charmer. But he's shown absolutely no charm since he's been back at PSG, and that's a problem when he's projecting an international image for them. And you saw it again after the game last night against Bordeaux. He said, no, there's nothing to worry about, there's no problem. And apparently there's no problem because Montpellier are top, because they needed a late equaliser to get away with a point from Lyon, from Caen, who a bottom half side, and again in this game against Bordeaux, and he's just saying there's no problem by completely flat batting it, and people aren't buying it at all.
Now, help me out with something here, okay? Because let's talk Lille Metropole OSC, as us sophisticates like to call it. Now, LOSC, exactly. Now, leaving aside the fact that this is a team that has, about 15,000, their stadium holds about 15,000, they've already sold 20,000 seats, 20,000 season tickets for the new stadium. But in the summer, we're all supposed to lament the fact that they were victims of their own success because they've done well, and then they lose Gervinho, and they lose Adil Rami, and they lose Yohan Cabaye, and they lose Moussa Sow, and so we say, oh, look, they lose 4 players, there's big, evil, rich clubs elsewhere, little Lille, go back to mid-table. But they're in 3rd place now.
Yeah, but they have Hazard.
Right, that's right. They have Hazard. It's the one dude who knows he's leaving, who they hung on to.
Well, it's like Mönchengladbach having Royce. You only need that one guy.
I think they have more than just one player. Please tell me, is it the genius of, is Rudy Garcia really a genius? Should we be giving him more props?
He might be an evil genius, I think, because he
does Joe Cole?
Is it Joe Cole?
With a sort of roll neck all the time. It's extraordinary. There was an interview with Joe Cole in one of the papers last week, and we know he's taken on Rudy Garcia's methods, and he really believes in the sort of football he's playing. He started dressing like him as well. He was wearing a blazer and a grey roll neck like Dr. Evil. Absolutely extraordinary. But Garcia's got a philosophy that the players really believe in. But I think it's something that all of France is beginning to believe in. And, as you said, they lost those 3 big players last summer. They know they're going to lose Hazard this, and it has been his most productive season. But they've got other players coming up. And I think really if you look at the players they signed to replace, when Gervinho and Cabaye and Adil Rami went last summer, it shows how much of a reach and reputation they've got. Like that they managed to get Dimitri Payet from St Etienne, who PSG really wanted. And I think, again, this is another thing that PSG's international clout is giving to the rest of Ligue 1, that opportunity, and that the young players. So if you look at Sochaux, for example, where you have Marvin Martin and Riyad Boudabous, they're not going to want to go there to sit on the bench when they're 23, 24 years old. They want to play, and they know that that won't happen at PSG because it will be an international star that will come in, and Payet's a good example of that.
Sounds like Lille are doing things right. Andy, sorry, we're pressed for time. We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much, Andy Russell.
Take care.
Mina, goes from better to even better.
I know, we have a little bit of a South American flair coming
Exactly. When we're back, we will take you to Brazil.
Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. Now we're going to move on and make more of a world football show, so not speaking about Europe only. And we move over to Brazil. And obviously the hot topic at the moment is everyone discussing Neymar. Is he the greatest talent? Everyone's arguing about it. He's young enough. What do you think? Is he the next Messi? Could he be better?
Could he be better than Messi? I think you're setting the bar.
I don't think so either.
You're setting the bar kind of high right now. It's funny because I think worst case scenario, Neymar turns into Robinho. I know.
But it's likely to happen. It's very likely to happen, and I think it's got a lot to do with the way that, firstly, the refs treat them over there, and strikers are a little bit spoiled over there in the way that I think that defenders aren't, which is why we're seeing a current surge of great Brazilian talent at the back, like Thiago Silva, like Maicon, like Dani Alves, you know, that we don't...
Yes, Maicon and Dani Alves, that's right. It's young, up-and-coming Brazilian
No, but I'm talking
talent
about as in this current generation of defenders. We never used to see that. I mean, barring Cafu, you know, like
How
there
does
wasn't
yes,
great...
Roberto Carlos, Aldair, all those guys were rubbish too.
You know
I'm
what
sorry,
I mean,
when it comes to
though?
Brazil, I get kind of defensive because I think in Europe we have all these awful stereotypes about Brazilian football, which I think are
But I
just
do think that
mean
they
and
are creating a
narrow-minded.
lot more defensive talent than they used to be, and I think that has a lot to do with the way
I'm going
that...
to send Carlos Dunga around to your house later.
Hello, we'd like to welcome John Cottrell from
He'll set us straight.
Exactly, hopefully you'll set us straight about this, from TV Globo. Hello, John, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Okay, I want you to back me up here. Do you think that some strikers in Brazil playing in their homeland at the moment can be a little bit spoiled, considering that they can earn, you know, if they're one-on-one, it's easy for them to get a free kick in the way that they may not be so easy to get in Europe?
Oh yeah, that is true, but that's obviously that's not their fault. It's the officials in Brazil who are a little card happy. Getting better, less cards or fewer cards, should I say, in the last couple of years in the Brasileirão, which is the Brazilian National Championship, and also the state championships. But the general standard refereeing is 34, and they do give a lot of free kicks. So obviously, you know, players know that, and they take advantage.
Okay, and also I want to talk to you about Neymar. Now, there's a lot of arguments about whether or not we can't judge him until he comes to Europe. Now, Brazil is obviously, a booming economy at the moment, whereas Europe is going down. Brazil can afford to keep hold of him, even though Santos has to get rid of their women's league and have to deal with lots of commercial adverts in order to be able to keep him. Is it better for him to move to Europe, like the Brazilian coach says, in order for him to gain that experience that would prove vital for him to develop further, or can he just stay?
It's not just Mano Menezes, it's also Roberto Falcao, the former Roma Brazil player, and Ronaldo, of course. They wanted to move, but Neymar's father, Neymar da Silva Jr., said, and he said it a couple of days ago, that Neymar is going to stay in Brazil until the World Cup 2014, principally because he has like 9 or 10 sponsorship deals with different companies, and they are paying him in total, alongside the salary he gets from Santos, around £700,000 a month, more or less this. But it's about, of that fee, Santos pay around 80,000. So you can see that all the money's coming from the sponsorship. So that would be complicated if he moved away and played in Europe. Obviously, there's that side of things. People say he's got to prove himself in Europe, but Neymar at 20, you know, if you were getting £700,000 a month at 20 and you were with your friends, you know, and you're quite happy and doing well in Brazil, I think that's the thing. So he's going to stay here the time being. He's got the Libertadores, of course, which is not quite the same as the Champions League, but still that level of football for him to go at. And of course, with Brazil.
John, how important is it, obviously with 2014 being in Brazil, how important do you think it's perceived to be for a lot of the, maybe not Neymar so much, but a lot of the guys who aren't assured a starting spot in the Seleção to go and stay in Brazil and stay in the eyes of the media and Mano Menezes and whatnot?
Well, you know, I've heard this argument before. Wagner Lovey said it the first time he came back to Flamengo. Oh, I've come back to Brazil so I can be in the eye of Mano Menezes. And every player who doesn't do particularly well in Europe always comes up with the same excuse. You know, I'm coming back, so Mano Menezes in Brazil can see me. But obviously, in today's game, when here in Brazil we get every single Champions League match live, we get nearly all the Premier League games live. I think more than you've probably seen in the UK, in fact. Maybe 6 games on Sunday and Saturday this weekend. That argument for me doesn't really hold any water because, you know, wherever you play, you're going to be seen. especially if you're in the Champions League.
John, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, although I have about a ton more questions to ask you. So
Please come back.
Yeah, please come back, and hopefully next week we can ask my questions, more of them. Thank you so much for joining us. Did you enjoy yourself, Gab?
As I always do. Mina, did you?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. That is sadly all we have time for this week. Another solid performance. But do join us next week where we discuss Europe, Brazil, South America, wherever it takes us. Same time, same place, same football chat. See you then. Bye.
Stay ahead of the game with Sports Tonight Live. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search for Sports Tonight Live on Facebook and like our fan page. Follow Sports Tonight TV on Twitter and tweet us your thoughts and opinions. Sports Tonight Live, it's the platform for the fans.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm Mina Rzouki and I'm joined by the fabulous Gabriele Marcotti. Hello Gab, how are you?
Well, I'm feeling fabulous today.
It's my
as you like to
favorite
say in your
adjective.
world of fashion, exactly.
It's just us two today, but why would you need anyone more? We're going to start off in Spain because because it's been a while that we started off with Spain. It used to be our sort of favorite league to cover in the beginning.
Well, it still is. It's gotten really excited, and Tim Stannard from La Liga Loca will be talking to us. He'll be joining us in a minute. I wanted to start with something which got a lot of play where we are here in England, and that's this story about the Real Madrid theme park they're opening up in the Gulf.
Yes.
You read about this?
Yes, I did.
And what struck me is everybody sort of spoke disparagingly and mockingly about this, like, oh, it's so crass, and they're only doing this to get around financial fair play rules and so on. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, well, Messi and Ronaldo, and the fact that, as we're going to talk to you in a bit, it's getting really excited also for the hunt for fourth place and third place too, of course. That right now the big news here seemed to be this Real Madrid theme park, and they're all calling it crass and commercial, as if Premier League clubs are anything but that. But I just want to get, how was it received in Spain? Did anybody, because the announcement came Thursday, right?
Yeah, it came Thursday, which was a very good time for it to come. They did it on the morning. So it got a few pages. Well, you have to be fair, the only people really going to talk about it are the papers like Marca and AS. It'll be ignored pretty much everywhere else, and they're not really going to take the pee, as they say, or mock it. So it'll, done with all due reverence, how much it's going to cost, what it's going to look like. I've had a look at it. The plans. I've no idea what there is to actually do there. There seems to be some kind of roller coaster. There's kind of a stadium, a beach, and a hotel, but I'm not really sure what else there is to do. It's going to cost $1 billion. Obviously, there's a lot of private finance going in, and I don't know why you'd want to go there, though.
Wouldn't you want to go somewhere that your club is represented and it's like a little funfair land?
Well, I'd like to see what Ipswich Town would do, basically, which is my club.
It's like you're encouraged to sort of, be cool and not have this kind of like need to make money or to spend money. It's like Real Madrid and Manchester City are the most hated clubs because they spend money.
Yeah, well, completely. And in the case of the theme park as well, I mean, as I understand it, I think part of the idea from Real Madrid's perspective is they supposedly have this big fan base in China. And so all these dudes in China who just can't afford to ever get to the Bernabeu, the idea is they can go to the Gulf for a couple of days, experience
the Real Madrid experience.
It sounds horrible to me too. This sort of cheesy, like I think one of the pieces I read today, they're going to call them the Sergio Ramos tapas served on the Pepe.
It's brilliant that it's in Dubai.
Face.
Everything fake, a little bit. That's the general feeling that you get about Dubai and the Middle East. Sorry, the Emirates.
The Gulf, I think, in general, is probably
There's some old. This is a long story if we're going to get into that. But
whatever, it's their thing. It's a thing to make money. But other thing on the positives is, while it is obviously crass and commercial, it's also a chance for for fans in that part of the world, fans who, for whom it's easier to travel there than it is to travel all the way to Madrid.
Surely it's not the same thing for them, but yeah, I guess to feel closer to your club.
What are you going to do?
Hey, listen, if there's a Juventus one, I'd be going.
There you go.
There we go. But let's talk about this.
What does that mean, get around financial fair play rules? Like, the rules are how much money are you getting in, how much is going out.
How do you get around it by having this?
They're not getting around it. They're just finding an extra stream of revenue.
Right.
Secondly, people say it's crass and commercial. Now, this really, really bugs me, okay? Because
I thought the whole point is to make money in this industry.
well, it's a commercial business. I mean, that's crass and commercial, but like your Nottingham Forest branded underpants aren't. I mean, I don't understand. Seriously. I mean, this really, really gets to me.
You know what it is? I wonder whether people would feel the same if it wasn't Real Madrid.
I expect they wouldn't. I mean, I think what happens is if you're Real Madrid or if you're Manchester United or Barcelona, although they get more press, when you do sort of these big things, remember Manchester United in the red cafes?
Yes.
People will go and they will mock and they'll put them down and they'll call them sellouts. And, we've kind of gone past that. Football is what it is. Clubs are there.
Commercial businesses.
Clubs are commercial businesses. And right now, even if they really didn't want to be, they kind of have to be because of financial fair play. And I don't know, I just really,
Listen,
really
if you have it and you can do it and you can make money, why would people say no to that idea? This is what it is. I'm getting a little bit tired of it, but it seems that the whole world is fascinated by how much Messi and Ronaldo continue to break records. And of course, Lionel Messi overtook Ronaldo, the Brazilian one, or as I like to call him, the fat one, as Barcelona's highest ever scorer in a league season. Meanwhile, it looks like if Ronaldo...
And it's still March, by the way. Just get this clear.
Yeah.
It's still March. Like he did it in 3/4 of the season. This is what's so absurd.
Yeah, well, it's a different, you could argue millions of things, but also in the fact that Ronaldo only needs to score against Mallorca, I believe, and Barcelona to hit having scored against every single opponent in a season.
Yeah, I think the record, he tied the record, which is 17. Somebody scored against 17 different clubs.
It was in a 22-side league or something.
So he's already ahead of it there.
Yeah, basically.
I think we are in a bit of a special place, but...
are they the two best that we've ever seen?
They're the two best that we've ever seen. Possibly the two best together at one time that we've ever seen.
Okay.
Possibly. But we've got Tim with us. Can we get Tim on the theme park?
Yes,
honestly, Tim,
this is really affecting Gab, Tim Stannard from La Liga Loca. How are you?
How are you doing, Tim? Here in England...
I'm very good. Nice to speak to you.
It's like they're so bored with